Cheat Code Support Strategist by Clouds. My Head in the Clouds, Not Coming Down. On AO3. Chapter 20. Anomalies. Izuku sharpened his pencil and separated the notebook he dedicated to Class 1A. He didn't really think he'd learned anything new about their quirks today, since they were just doing special rescue training. But it would be interesting to see how they applied their quirks in a non-combat oriented situation. He was practically excited to see how Katsuki reacted to being confronted with a problem he couldn't just punch. Izuku glanced at the clock. The class would be arriving in just a few minutes, assuming that no one had any issues getting into their costumes or anything. So he went ahead and opened up the camera feed to get a visual of 13 already waiting inside. Their quirk was amazing. Izuku made a mental note that he needed to get their autographs sometime. Maybe after their sports festivals? Since the student hadn't arrived yet, Izuku figured he might as well use the time to familiarize himself with the faculty. It was cool. There were all sorts of different terrains that simulated different disasters that the students would have to deal with as pro heroes. And from his place inside the systems, Izuku could see easily all the different controls of each of the zones. At any time, 13 Nezu or whoever was teaching could easily turn off any of the disaster zones if anything went wrong, or even turn them up of control them almost like a video game to offer the students more of a challenge. They've been set to the lowest atomic disaster setting for the first years, obviously, but Izuku knew he'd been asking Nezu if he could observe one of the third year's rescue exercises so he could see the building's full potential. It was so cool. Movement on one of the screens caught his attention as the bus finally arrived, and students started to file off following a grumpy eraserhead like a line of little ducklings. Izuku snickered to himself. Maybe there was a way he could make sure Katsuki heard that. It would be sure to piss him off. The last student left the bus. Izuku checked the schedule. Wasn't All Might supposed to be there today? As 13 lectures to students on quick safety, Izuku hummed thoughtfully and put his phone to check the news. May had called him to ramble about a new idea right as he was about to get off the train, so he hadn't really had a chance to read the headlines that morning like he usually did. Sure enough, All Might was all over the news, which meant he was already be either near or over his limit for the day. Izuku couldn't fault him, since those people obviously needed to be saved, and being their hero was All Might's job. But he had been really looking forward to seeing his favorite hero perform rescue exercises just like his debut. But even if he hadn't actually been in the same room, it still would have been really cool to watch something like that live. With the mystery of All Might's absence solved, Izuku turned his attention to the screens in front of him, where 13 was finishing up their lecture as blackish purple something started to appear behind them. Izuku frowned and zoomed in to get a closer look. He hadn't seen any obstacles like that in the system, but it was impossible he'd miss. Suddenly, every camera cut out at the exact same time. Izuku immediately attacked his keyboard, desperately trying to convince himself that there was no reason to panic. It must just be a weird electronic glitch or something. There was no way that purple thing was a villain trying to attack the students, right? But even if it was an electronic glitch, there was a failsafe on the other electronic system that would trigger the alarms if a certain number of cameras stopped working. And that alarm wasn't going off. No alarms were. After a minute of trying to get the cameras back up, Izuku hesitantly stood up and left his desk. It was probably nothing. UA security was the best of the best, but it still wouldn't hurt to have Power Loader call 13 and make sure everything was alright, right? It was completely unnecessary and would probably annoy them, because there was definitely not a villain attacking happen right now. But just in case there was, Izuku slowly approached Power Loader's desk, only to find him talking to Hatsume. He didn't want to interrupt him while he was helping another student, but there might be an attack going on right now. Power Loader. Midoriya? Power Loader nodded at him. I'll be with you in just a minute. Izuku took a deep breath. The longer he thought about it, the more the whole situation seemed wrong. He familiarized himself with the USJ, and there was nothing like that. The purple thing. Now he was definitely not the time to let his social anxiety get the better of him. Actually, sir, Izuku tried to interject as much urgency as he could, hoping Power Loader would get the message without making the class panic. I need you to check something now. Power Loader looked at him steadily. Hatsume, just keep working. I'm going to see what Midoriya needs, and I'll be back in a minute. And Hatsuki shrugged. Good naturally, Izuku walked back to his workroom quickly as he can without running gracefully beyond belief that Paraloto was so different from his middle school teachers. He trusted him without asking too many questions. It was nice, and he would probably be crying if he wasn't so worried. Part of him half expected the cameras to be working again when he got back to his computer, making his entire anxiety attack an embarrassing overreaction. But of course, all of the screens were still blank. Izuku waited for Paraloto to follow him in before closing the door. Alright, Midoriya, what is this about? Paraloto asked. It's not like you to interrupt like that. Yes, obviously, but not. I lost contact with USJ, Izuku blurted out. Paraloto froze. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was watching 1A over the cameras and everything was fine, but then there was this purple thing and the camera just stopped working. I couldn't find anything like that in the system, and there should be alarms going off, but there's not, and Izuku forced himself to stop rambling and took a deep breath. I think it might be a villain attack. Paraloto took a sharp inhale of breath. Is All Might 13 and Eraser there today, right? Izuku shook his head. 13 and Eraser are there, but All Might already is at his limit. Is there any way you could call them, just to make sure everything's alright? Paraloto was already pulling out the phone. Why am I not surprised that you know about that? I'm sure everything's fine. This'll just take a minute. Izuku held his breath as his phone rang. After a long minute, Paraloto took the phone from his ear and dialed another number. Eraser sometimes doesn't answer the phone. You know how he is. He thinks it's a waste of time. But 13 should have their phone on them. Paraloto's face grew more and more worried as the phone continued to ring with no answer until he finally put it away. I need to report this to Nezu. Izuku gulped and sat down at his desk, pulling his keyboard towards him. So it was an attack then. I'll try to contact the cameras and keep you updated. Paraloto nodded, stiffly, and left, only to return a few seconds later with a small box that he settled down on the desk in front of him. Have you ever used the comm link before? Izuku shook his head and Paraloto took out and handed it to him. Okay, channel control is right at the side. Just tune it to channel 3, and you'll be able to talk to any of the teachers once they turn on their comms. It's an open line, so we should be able to hear anything. Do you understand? Izuku set the comm like Paraloto had told him and put his to his ear, and then nodded. Paraloto returned the gesture before throwing open the door to the lab. Hatsume, as class rep, I'm leaving you in charge. Make sure nobody blows anything up. There were some groans and explanations, but Paraloto didn't pay any attention to any of them as he closed the door to the workshop and left the lab as quickly as he could. Izuku distractedly noted that he didn't run either, so they didn't want to cause a panic at the main school then. Okay, cool. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he started troubleshooting the cameras. He had only been in a few minutes when the PA system cracked to life, but Izuku barely noticed the announcement. All teachers, please report to the front office immediately. Again, all teachers, please report to the front office. There was a small sting of code that seemed to be repeating, and it looked almost like it would be technology quirk of some kind was blocking the signals. Izuku felt torn. On one hand, having a quirk involved meant that it was almost definitely villains. But on the other hand, Izuku knew quirks. All he had to do was find the quirk's weakness and exploit it. Midoriya? Paraloto's voice echoed in the earpiece. Are you still there? Yes, sir. Izuku didn't stop working, even as the teacher started talking. Wait, the little listeners on the comm link? That was President Mike's voice. He knew it all too well, from listening to his radio show for years. Young Midoriya is here, All Might asked. It seemed like Nezu was ignoring all of them, since he addressed Izuku next. Have you had any luck re-establishing connecting with USJ faculty? Not yet, sir, Izuku said distractedly. But it is a technology quirk and yes! Do you have a visual? Paraloto asked. What? Izuku's brain took a moment to catch up. Oh, no, not yet, but I figured out how the blocking quirk works. It seemed only to be blocking a specific type of signal. I mean, that's obvious what our cameras are using, but I might as well try to jury-rig this thing from my side and use another type of signal to connect. Alright, Nezu said. Do that and tell us immediately when you get through. Izuku felt a small surge of pride. Nezu had said when, not if. He believed in him. He shook his head. No time to think about that right now. Right now, he needed to make sure that the teachers weren't going into this fight blind. It took him a few minutes to hack his way through, But he actually tried hacking UA twice now, so he knew all the systems worked, and with the extra permissions that Nezu had given him, Izuku had just barely enough experience and authority to do what he had in mind. He hit only one final key, and the cameras flared to life again, and Izuku didn't like what he saw. Those were definitely villains. Nezu, I have visual. What's the situation? Students have been scattered throughout the faculty, Izuku reported. Eraserhead is fighting, but he's outnumbered. There are dozens of them, mostly low level though. It looks like 13 is by the entrance, protecting some of the students. They seem to be in a stalemate with some of the villains, probably the one responsible for the purple thing. I saw before the cameras cut out, considering they seem to be made of some kind of purple mist. Izuku didn't know he was composing, considering that there was a villain attack happening and oh my god, people might die, but he was supposed to be too busy to panic. Or maybe he was challenging his panic to focus? That made sense. Suddenly, the stalemate between 13 and the villain broke. 13 is down, Izuku yelled. I repeat, 13 is down. He heard several of the teachers swearing over the line, but he was too busy staring at the screen to reply. 13 were they were going to survive the attack. Is this what the villains really did? Izuku felt so powerless. He wasn't even there. He couldn't even do anything to help. There is a physical limit to how fast we can go, Hound Dog growled. All Might sounded worried. Maybe I should... No, Izuku starting at the cameras again. You're already at your limit, and if you use what little you have left to get there, you're not going to have enough energy to fight the villains. The students are holding their own now. The only one hurt is 13. She has a warp quirk, and turned their quirk against them. It was a lucky shot, and it won't work against most of the students. But Midoriya is correct, Nezu said. If there is a warp quirk, there might be a powerful quirk as well. The students need to be as close to full strength as possible. Eraserhead is there, and villains don't know what they know of the attack, so it's better we go as humanly possible for now. Midoriya, let us know if anything changes. Will do. Izuku felt so useless. There had been something he could do. It might help the heroes if he could figure out why the villains were there, and for that he needed audio. Izuku used the same hack he used on the cameras and started eavesdropping on the villains' conversation, switching the microphones rapidly as he tried to overhear anything useful. Don't tell me the plan. Kid, I swear. One of the villains was caught in Todoroki's eyes. All they told me was they were going to kill All Might. That's all I know. Izuku switched mics again as Todoroki started unhauling the villain. Not the most hero-like, but then again, neither was hacking, so he couldn't talk. They're here to kill All Might. I don't know why or how yet. There was a villain near where Eraserhead was fighting, but he almost seemed to be supervising instead of fighting himself. Izuku switched to one of the mics near him as the villain started scratching at his neck. A stress response? When the final boss gets here. The villain's voice was rapping and muttering to himself. We're running out of NPCs. So immature, it was hard to tell how old the villain was, but considering he called his own men NPCs, he was most definitely the leader. Probably antisocial, considering the video game references. Final boss must be All Might. Did he know that the heroes were on the way? No. Then he would have said something about final bosses, or even mini-bosses. But he didn't, so was probably thinking that All Might was just late. Shit. The video game references gave him an idea. Now, he had done it twice. It didn't take Izuku all that long to hack into each different zones. Within minutes, he had the weapons of the artificial flooding, earthquake simulations, flame-throwing, and so much more at his fingertips. With the Eraserhead slowing down, he had to do everything in his power to make sure the students were safe. Alright, villain, you want to treat this like a game? Izuku stretched his hands out in front of him, popping his knuckles. Then let's play.
Badass. Badass. That's the... Oh my god. Oh my god. I love this so much. The way Izuku immediately knew something was wrong, caught the attention, had all the teachers running there to, like, help, and all of this. Oh my god. The whole, you wanna, let's play. I'm sorry. I'm getting up. I'm sorry. That is... Oh my... I am lost for words. I don't know if you could tell. I don't even know what to say. I love this so much. All of it is just... It's amazing. It's wonderful. I cannot wait for the next chapter. In fact, I might actually record it right now. I don't care that it's 11 p.m. and I need to sleep. I might record it right now just to know what happens because I can't be left on this cliffhanger. I can't be left on that one-liner. Then let's play. I'm sorry. You don't get to pull out that cool one-liner and expect me not to skip ahead and record a week in advance just because I want to know what happens next. As always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Join our community server. Link is in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.